Imagine this. You've spent years wrestling with the shadows inside you. You face the anger you once buried, the shame you thought would swallow you whole, the wounds that shaped your every choice. You've done the work others avoid. You've stripped away illusions, torn off masks, and stepped into the raw honesty of your own darkness. And yet, standing there naked before yourself, something terrifying lingers. A question. If I am no longer defined by my wounds, then who am I? It's a cruel paradox. You thought the battle with your shadow would end in clarity, in a shining revelation of purpose. But instead, you find yourself in an abyss of silence, where old roles no longer fit and new ones have not yet arrived. The world feels muted, your identity blurred, as if you are a ghost haunting your own life. Why does freedom feel like emptiness? Why does healing bring confusion instead of certainty? Why does becoming whole begin with feeling lost? Carl Jung understood this dilemma. He warned that integrating the shadow is not the conclusion of the journey, but the threshold of a deeper mystery. To strip away the lies of the persona is one thing, but to stand in the space beyond them without scripts, without costumes, without the safety of performance that is something altogether different. It is the silence after the storm, the void where the self waits to be born. And this void terrifies us. We are creatures addicted to certainty, to labels, to roles that tell us who we are. The achiever, the caretaker, the survivor. But when those identities dissolve, when you are no longer driven by your trauma or trapped by your mask, what remains? Is there such a thing as a self without performance? Is purpose something we find, like treasure buried in the world? Or is it something we must become, like a fire slowly kindled from within? Perhaps the real question is not, what is my purpose? But, who am I when I am no longer pretending? You can feel it, can't you? The quiet dread that maybe life has no inherent meaning, that purpose is just a story we tell ourselves to survive the unbearable weight of existence. And yet, there is also a whisper in that silence, something fragile but insistent. Maybe the emptiness is not a curse, but an invitation. Because if the shadow revealed what you are not, then perhaps this strange void holds the key to discovering who you truly are. So the challenge is set before you. Will you run back to the safety of old roles, or will you dare to step deeper into this unknown, to uncover the truth waiting on the other side of your shadow? You see, the silence after shadow work isn't a mistake. It isn't proof that you failed. It is the unavoidable consequence of living in a world that trained you from birth to be someone other than yourself. From the moment you first cried in the crib, expectations began to shape you. Family rules, cultural norms, religious dogmas. The silent contracts of survival all converge to mold a persona, a mask, carefully crafted to keep you safe. Jung called this mask the persona, and without it, you wouldn't have survived. But here's the tragedy. The very armor that once protected you eventually becomes your prison. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "Become who you are." But how can you become who you are if you've never been allowed to simply be? For decades, you've been rewarded for betraying yourself, applauded for fitting in, praised for discipline, loved for being useful. Slowly, the authentic self was exiled to the shadow, while the performance of who you should be took center stage. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that beneath all our striving lies a blind, restless will, a ceaseless drive to become, to achieve, to matter. Society taps into this will and manipulates it, convincing you that your worth comes only through roles, accomplishments, or the approval of others. And so, by the time you reach adulthood, your life is a patchwork of identities stitched together, not from truth, but from survival. This is why, after integrating your shadow, you feel like you've fallen into nothingness. The scaffolding collapses, and without the mask, you no longer know how to live. It's not just an identity crisis, it's an existential wound. Jean-Paul Sartre called it nausea, the realization that meaning is not given, it must be created. But here is the hidden problem. The modern world is allergic to silence. It doesn't teach you how to sit in the void. It teaches you to fill it quickly with new identities, new distractions, new illusions. Lose one mask, and society will gladly sell you another. The successful entrepreneur, the spiritual seeker, the wellness guru, each one shinier than the last, but still hollow at the core. This is why so many collapse after shadow work. They confuse emptiness with failure. They mistake the void for meaninglessness, when in truth, the void is the birthplace of the self. Jung warned that individuation, the process of becoming whole, demands that you endure this gap between who you were and who you are becoming. It is not a detour, it is the path itself. But endurance is rare in a culture addicted to speed and certainty. And so the great paradox emerges. Only by surrendering to this emptiness can you awaken the authentic self. But the majority cannot bear the silence long enough to discover what waits inside it. The question is, will you? When you refuse to face the silence, it doesn't simply disappear. It festers beneath the surface, shaping your choices in ways you can't see. What looks like progress is often just performance in disguise. What looks like meaning is often just distraction dressed as destiny. Consider this. Most people never truly discover who they are. They only discover who they're expected to be. They climb ladders without asking where they lead, chase dreams that were never theirs, and call it purpose when in reality, it's obedience. This is the unseen trap, the shadow rebranded as success. Psychologists call it confirmation bias, the tendency to only notice evidence that supports the story you've already told yourself. So you convince yourself you're happy in the job that drains you, because everyone says it's prestigious. You insist your relationship is fulfilling, because it looks stable from the outside. You cling to identities that suffocate you, because abandoning them would mean entering that unbearable silence again. Neurology adds another twist. The human brain is wired for efficiency. It clings to familiar patterns even when they're destructive. This is why you repeat the same toxic dynamics, why you recreate the same disappointments, why you choose the same kind of suffering over and over. It's not because you're weak, it's because your mind confuses predictability with safety. And so, the very silence that could liberate you becomes the silence you fear most. Culturally, the consequences are staggering. We've built entire societies on the avoidance of this void. Look around. Consumerism thrives because emptiness is unbearable. Endless entertainment, endless scrolling, endless consumption, all designed to drown out the whisper of the self. We would rather numb ourselves with noise than risk listening to the quiet voice within. And what does this avoidance create? A generation of people who look successful but feel hollow. Leaders who wield power but have no vision. Families that appear stable but are built on unspoken resentments. Individuals who mistake busyness for meaning, productivity for purpose, applause for love. Here lies the cruel irony. The very thing you fear, the silence, the emptiness, the uncertainty, is the doorway to the authentic self. But by avoiding it, you guarantee a life half-lived, a life performed rather than lived. This is the unseen consequence. A world full of people who have faced their shadows but fled from their souls. They have healed enough to function, but not enough to awaken. They stand on the threshold of purpose and turn back. And yet, there is another possibility. To rebel against this conditioning. To choose stillness over distraction. To endure the silence long enough to hear what is waiting within it. The real breakthrough comes not when you escape the void, but when you stop running from it. What if the very thing you've been taught to fear, the silence, the not knowing, the emptiness, is the weapon that liberates you? What if rebellion is not about doing more, achieving more, or rushing to reinvent yourself, but about refusing to escape the void? To rebel, you must break the spell of performance. You must refuse the next mask, no matter how shiny, how seductive, how safe it feels. That is the first act of true freedom. Saying no to the script the world hands you, even when it leaves you with nothing but a terrifying blank page. Carl Jung called this descent into uncertainty individuation. Nietzsche called it becoming who you are. Viktor Frankl, after surviving the unspeakable emptiness of the concentration camps, wrote that meaning is not given to us. It is something we must wrestle into existence by how we choose to respond to life itself. And so rebellion begins not with answers, but with defiance. You stop numbing the silence with endless distractions. You resist the cultural hypnosis that tells you productivity is proof of worth. You step out of the current that sweeps everyone toward sameness, and instead you stand still, waiting to hear the faint, unfamiliar sound of your own soul. This rebellion is not glamorous. It will not be applauded. It will look to the outside world like failure. Leaving a job without a better one lined up. Ending a relationship without someone new waiting. Creating without any guarantee of recognition or reward. But in truth, these are acts of radical courage, because every time you choose uncertainty over illusion, you reclaim a fragment of yourself. History belongs to those who dared this rebellion. Think of Socrates, who chose death rather than betray his commitment to truth. Think of Nietzsche, who risked madness in pursuit of authenticity. Think of artists, mystics, and visionaries across centuries who were ridiculed, condemned, or exiled for daring to live from the inner voice rather than the outer chorus. Their lives testify to this paradox. Only by losing the world's approval can you gain your own soul. And here's the secret. Once you stop running from the void, something begins to shift. The silence that once terrified you becomes fertile. Possibilities sprout where fear once lived. You begin to sense that this rebellion isn't about destroying your life. It's about creating the conditions for life to finally be lived authentically. Rebellion is not about fighting the shadow anymore. It is about refusing to abandon the silence after the shadow. It is about trusting that in the stillness, something truer than all your masks will emerge. The question is no longer, who should I be? But rather, am I brave enough to hear who I already am? This is the final, unspoken truth. Your purpose is not something you find. It is not waiting in a career assessment, a 5-year plan, or a guru's promise of clarity. Your purpose is not out there, it is in here. It is the natural expression of who you truly are, when nothing is left to prove, when no mask remains to wear, when you are no longer bargaining for acceptance. Jung called this individuation, the process by which the fragmented self becomes whole. And here lies the revelation. Your purpose is not separate from your authentic self. It is your authentic self expressed fully in the world. You've been taught to chase purpose as if it were a prize, but chasing assumes it is outside of you, elusive, something to be won. The truth is more radical, more unsettling, and infinitely more freeing. You don't chase purpose. You allow it. Purpose isn't a path you walk. It is the way you walk every path. Think of a tuning fork. It does not struggle to create sound. It vibrates effortlessly at its natural frequency. Your soul works the same way. Your purpose is not manufactured by striving, it is revealed by resonance. Every moment you choose authenticity over performance. Every time you act from truth instead of fear. Every instant you live in alignment with what makes you feel alive, you are vibrating at the frequency of your purpose. This realization turns the paradox on its head. The void is not your enemy, it is your sanctuary. The silence is not a punishment, it is the soil from which your authentic self grows. What once felt like nothingness was actually the clearing you needed for something real to take root. And this is why so many miss it. They flee too soon. They run back to roles, identities, and illusions because they cannot bear to wait for the dawn. But if you endure, if you resist the temptation to fill the silence, you will discover something extraordinary. Your life itself becomes the purpose. Not what you do, but how you do it. Not what you achieve, but who you become in the process. Viktor Frankl, who endured the most harrowing conditions imaginable, said that purpose arises not from circumstances, but from the stance we take toward them. Meaning is not given, it is created. And in that creation, the soul comes alive. Here is the haunting beauty. Your purpose may never look impressive to the world. It may not make headlines, win awards, or leave monuments behind. But if it makes your soul expand, if it leaves you feeling more alive than asleep, if it radiates authenticity into even the smallest corner of existence, then it is holy. And perhaps that is the ultimate rebellion. To live so authentically that your very existence becomes a gift. To embody Jung's truth that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. So let us return to the great question that began this journey. If I am no longer defined by my wounds, who am I? The answer is not a role, not a title, not a plan. The answer is a becoming. You are not a fixed identity. You are a process, a movement, a resonance. You are the fire that burns when masks fall away. The paradox is complete. The emptiness after shadow work is not the absence of purpose, it is its birthplace. The silence is not a void to escape, it is a womb of transformation. And when you stop running, when you allow yourself to be who you already are beneath the conditioning, your purpose does not need to be found. It reveals itself through you. So ask yourself not, what should I do with my life? But how can I be more myself today? Because the moment you choose authenticity over performance, life itself becomes the answer. Your soul has been whispering all along. The question is, are you quiet enough to listen?